And
Great.
we never talked about Smash on the Switch.
No. We could have done. We'll save that. We'll do a Smash special next time. Hello and welcome to episode 8 of the ugvm podcast. I'm your host, Andy Kavanagh, but you can call me deKay, and with me today are Choobs.
Hello.
Tim.
Hi there.
And Luffer.
How you doing?
Hello. I'm not sure the three of you have all been on this together yet, is that right?
I don't think so, no.
Yeah.
No, this is a first.
This will be exciting for the listener then. That would be wonderful.
Finally proof that we're not all the same person.
Well, that's not proof. I mean, I could have just recorded them all myself and then just overlaid them. That would have been very tedious. Especially seeing as I can't...
You can keep the Scottish accent up.
No one could have come up with Zoe.
That's true, but then he's not here today, so yeah. And I couldn't do a Scottish accent for any length of time, so I wouldn't dare.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll start with some news then. One thing that's fairly recent is that, I don't know whether you're aware, but charts, the video game charts from next year will start to include download sales. I was quite surprised that they didn't already, to be honest, not that I really paid much attention, but it seems like it's quite some way behind music charts, and I don't know, do films have download charts?
Films do, yes. I mean, the reason that games don't is because people buy games direct from the console manufacturers and from Steam, and sometimes directly from the publishers, which means that there isn't kind of this kind of central repository of information that that you can easily get together.
I guess it's hard to independently verify the figures as well.
Exactly. But of course, the thing is that downloads, as you sort of imply, Andy, they are becoming more and more important in terms of the numbers sold, and on Steam especially.
Yeah, PC games have been at retail dead for years, haven't they? There's hardly anyone that sells them anymore.
No, exactly. And I did see a stat recently. I think it was something like still 15 to 20% of games are sold on disc in shops, which I was quite amazed about for PC.
So 15 to 20% of PC games are still sold on disc?
PC games, yeah.
Wow.
Really? I thought it would be in the low ones.
I haven't bought a PC game on disc since about the late 90s, early 2000s. I mean, it's got to be 15 years or more since I bought a game on disc.
Yeah, I think the last one I got was the Orange Box, and that helpfully came with Steam. So,
of course, the thing is that it's very difficult to verify those numbers because Steam doesn't release its sales figures.
No.
So it's not doing itself any favors there. But no, so yes, as you say, they're planning on including download sales figures for the first time starting from next year, and that's basically after getting Nintendo and Sony and Microsoft and Steam and Good Old Games and EA's Origin system and all the other things to sign up to a certain way of reporting sales.
Oh, okay. Well, hopefully we'll see then PC games actually start to appear in the charts a bit more. There was somebody posted a breakdown of some fairly recent releases, and it was odd seeing the between the Xbox and the PlayStation 4, 100% of sales, despite the fact that these games have clearly been out on the PC as well, but literally counting for nothing. So anyway, so whether that'll make a difference next year, we'll see. Something else, which people who watched the recent Nintendo Direct, there was a game announced on there, Undertale, which we've mentioned on the podcast before, but it was coming out for the Switch. Now, in itself, that isn't surprising, but what is surprising about it is the fact that it's written using Game Maker 2, and Game Maker 2 and the original Game Maker up until now haven't supported output to the Switch. So obviously two things could have happened. Obviously they may have rewritten it in something else, or what turned out to be the case quite soon afterwards is Yo-Yo Games, who make Game Maker 2, announced that they will soon be supporting the Switch. and it seems that Undertale's going to be the first, or if not the first, one of the first games that will use that. So what that means then for gamers is that there will be potentially a lot more games that are already out on other platforms coming to the Switch. And in fact, over the last couple of weeks since the Nintendo Direct, they've announced Hyper Light Drifter and Nidhogg 2 will be coming out on their Game Maker 2 games as well. So that also means that, the doors are open now for all kinds of things. So as examples, Cook Serve Delicious, Gunpoint, Death Ray Manta, Hotline Miami, Downwell, Spelunky, Nuclear Throne. So all kinds of things. Titan Souls as well, I think, is Game Maker as well. So
some of those are Game Maker 1, aren't they? And I don't know enough about this to make an informed comment, but is Game Maker 2 backwardsly compatible? As in, can someone who's written a game in Game Maker 1 use Game Maker 2 to compile it for the Switch?
I believe so, yes. So, I mean, there may be a little bit of work involved. I don't know too much about that, but I'm pretty sure that Game Maker 2 will import anything from Game Maker 1 without too much hassle. So, yeah. So it seems like obviously there's a load of games that are already out that could be on the way, but obviously more games that will be released from here on in may come to the Switch as well.
So for someone who doesn't know what Game Maker 2 is I'm assuming this is some sort of multi-platform development studio, or development platform that you can create a game and runs on various platforms.
Basically, think about Unity, but only for 2D games, pretty much.
So it's 2D only, right? Okay.
I suspect there are probably ways of doing 3D, but for the most part, I think pretty much everything has been 2D, and it's aimed at 2D game development. So, right. If you're doing much more than that, it's probably not how it's designed. But yeah, I mean, it started off as a really, really simple, like kids mess around, make your own, like cut and paste platformer. I think that's certainly what I used it for quite some years ago. But since then, obviously, it's become more powerful, and it's become a professional development tool, if you see what I mean. So as you can see for a number of games.
Is it actually a proper coding environment, or is it one of these drag and drop situations where you just grab a icon and say do this when this happens?
No, it's pretty much it is a proper one. Yeah, you do actually write code. I'm sure there are shortcuts and there are ways of making things easier, and doing animation automatically and stuff like that. But it's proper development environment. Yeah.
So is this not Scratch?
Sorry, it's not.
It's not like Scratch in terms of it being very aimed at preschool and I was going to say toddlers, but I'm slightly older than toddlers. Right. But
no, it's more complicated than that. Yeah, but it's quite easy.
Out of it are definitely kind of much better. Having said that, I did see that someone has coded the entirety of the Chase HQ arcade game in Scratch, which I thought was quite impressive.
Yeah, there is quite a lot of good stuff on there. There's somebody where I work is writing Mario Galaxy in it.
Yikes.
Yeah. It's not there yet, but it's very impressive.
So with Game Maker, is that the coding side? Is that kind of a standard coding? Is it like based on C++, or Java, or is it its own completely made up language, or is it BASIC? How does it kind of?
I honestly can't remember. It's close enough to other languages for me to understand it, or it was at the time. So and from the code snippets that I've seen people post, it's certainly along the lines of stuff like that. So yeah. I mean, it's possible you may be able to use C++ and stuff as well in it. I don't know, but the whole thing is basically that it appears to be it's not far away from when you've written your game. You click a series of buttons to decide which platform you want it on, and that's pretty much it. So,
okay, so there's not, you've got to make different versions for different platforms.
No, I mean, I'm sure there are some. Yeah, I'm sure there's obviously some bits and pieces you'd have to do for individual platforms, like change all the button images and things like that for any help screens, and I'm sure each of the company, like Sony and Microsoft, to stick them on their store, they'll have their own requirements and things. But for the most part, for the vast majority of the code and graphics and everything, it's cross-platform. So
sounds good.
Yeah. So so there could be all kinds of things on the way if there isn't enough already for the Switch.
I was going to say it's going to solve the Switch's big problem of not having enough games, obviously.
No. Well, I did finally get a micro SD card for my Switch today because it's finally full on the Switch. So there you are. Anyway, so that's my news. Choobs, what have you got?
Well, the first update of the new series of the new season of Elite Dangerous has appeared, which I'll probably gab around later on in the play section. But the one interesting thing is that it's actually a free update this time round. The first expansion series, Horizons, was, I think, pretty much the cost of the game when it first launched. It was another 30 quid. And it introduced a whole plethora of extra stuff. This time round, they're giving it to everyone for free, basically. They have been talking about having some additional premium DLC, possibly maybe sorta, but not out the door. So basically anyone who already has either basic Elite Dangerous or Elite Dangerous and Horizons will have access to the relevant bits of the new season. Now, allegedly, one of the reasons behind this is that they've been making enough money off cosmetic items to actually cover the costs, which is kind of impressive, really, when you consider how many shipskins you have to sell to actually break even. The season itself, it's only the first kind of smaller part of it that's live now, although that does actually contain a pretty vast amount of content. But like I said, I'll nip into that a bit later on.
Okay.
I feel quite honoured that you're here, actually, John, because you normally live in the world of Elite, don't you?
Yes, although not so much this month, which I'll get into a bit later as well.
Okay. Luffer, then, any news from you?
Well, yes, a couple of things. The new Vive Pro is released. I think it's been out for a couple of weeks or so, but it's sold out everywhere online. You can't get it even if you wanted it. But it is insanely expensive. They've priced it at £799 for the headset on its own. You don't get anything else with it. So if you don't have a Vive, then you need to buy the 2 Lighthouse base stations, which are £120 each. And you need to buy the 2 controllers, which are also £120 each.
Blimey.
So you're looking at, what's that, 700, that's 800, 240 each. It's about £1,300 for a basic get starting kit.
And that's without the PC and the graphics card.
And that's without the
it.
PC and the graphics card to run it. Yeah, that's just the hardware. Sorry, the headset and the base stations controller.
So how much
and
is it?
The difference between the standard and the Pro is it basically resolution on the headset?
Yeah, so it's got a slightly higher, well, apparently it's a significantly higher resolution, about 33% apparently, which, although it doesn't sound great in use, is apparently night and day difference, because it drastically reduces and almost removes entirely the screen door effect that you get with the headsets. Mm-hmm. And it's also got the headset, the Pro headset with the headphones built in and everything like that. And you can buy that headset separately for your old Vive if you want as an accessory.
So is it wireless now, or am I thinking of something else?
No, this is the thing. So this is why I think they've made a mistake, because I don't understand why this Vive Pro hasn't been made wireless out of the box, because they're going to be releasing soon a wireless adapter, which is going to be another, £150, £200 probably, which you can bolt on. That's compatible with the existing Vive and the new Vive Pro. But I don't understand why they haven't put that in the Vive Pro, because anyone that's an existing owner, really, unless you want a slightly better screen, there's no incentive for you to upgrade to it. And I don't see why new people that don't have the Vive would buy a Vive Pro, because the cost of entry is so insanely high when it doesn't come with any of the lighthouses or controllers.
Yeah.
I mean, as it stands, you might, if as a newcomer to VR, you're better off buying the standard Vive headset, which comes with the controllers and the base stations, which is now available, because they've cut the price of that to £499. So for £500, you can get the full kit. And then if you wanted, you could then buy a Vive Pro on top for another £800, and then sell your current Vive headset. Because even if you were to buy the Vive Pro and all the accessories, it's only, I think, about £20 cheaper than buying the original Vive, which comes with all the accessories and another Vive headset.
Jesus.
I mean, the pricing's, I don't know where they're going with the pricing. It seems crazy to me.
I think they've crossed the line there, because I mean the kind of the accepted fact of things these days is that you need a kick-ass PC to run it. But hey, the good thing is the VR headset is only 50% of the cost of the PC you'll need. That's no longer the case there. You're looking at spending more on the VR headset and accessories than you are on the kick-ass machine needed to run it.
Only just
Vive didn't announce recently
because if you look at the price, sorry.
I was going to say, Vive did announce recently, I think, that they were going to be developing an all-in-one headset, it will include the PC in the headsets.
Or was that Vive or was that Oculus? I think Oculus have done that.
Was it Oculus? Okay.
I wasn't aware. I think Oculus have made one called the Oculus Go, which is kind of like the Google Cardboard Samsung VR, but slightly better version of it.
You see, I remain unconvinced about wireless. If it's got a PC that is doing all the processing and you are relying on a wireless connection to the headsets, then this is where my job as a kind of telecommunications economist comes in handy, because I know all about spectrum and how you're going to get the signal from the PC to the headset. You could be introducing a couple of milliseconds of lag, and a couple of milliseconds of lag normally doesn't matter at all. But when it's being used on the headsets for kind of VR, then that can make people feel very ill.
Yep.
And so as soon as you put in something that has a wireless solution rather than a wired solution, then I just feel that it may make VR not the mass market it hopes to be.
Well, we have, it's not released yet, so we don't have a way of telling. But the only thing we can go by is the people that have tried out the sort of the beta or the test units, the pre-release hardware, and they've said there is no discernible lag whatsoever. It's exactly the same as using the wired headset in terms of the response.
One of the guys on another lower quality podcast that I listened to.
Where did you find that?
It was hidden on iTunes.
It's in a bin somewhere.
Yeah, it was a terrible quality podcast. But anyway, he's been playing with, obviously it may be an Elite Dangerous podcast. He's been playing with a third-party wireless kit for the Rift, and he says the big problem with that isn't latency; it's the horrific RF noise that gets introduced into the audio loop just through obviously attempting to wirelessly stream an HDMI style signal. So I think they're going to have all kinds of weird and wonderful problems they need to solve before they're going to be able to do it.
Can they not just go down the same route as of the Wii U? So we just have a Wii U gamepad, stick it in a Google Cardboard, and put it on your face.
Yeah,
surely that's all you need to do.
Yeah, it's very similar to that. The only difference is that the amount of information you need to transmit is much, much higher, and therefore you need to have a much greater bandwidth to spectrum to be able to do it.
Largely because of the frame rate you need. 90 plus
frame rate and resolution, because the Wii U gamepad was only, was that 720p,
I think.
720.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of data to be pushing, isn't it, to be fair? And
the last thing you want is lots of people being very sick simply because you got the numbers wrong.
It's a bit like isn't it?
I think that covers the Vive, doesn't it?
So when have you ordered? Have you pre-ordered one? Or
I haven't. No, I won't. I'm going to be waiting for a proper next generation of hardware to come out. I'm not spending £800 on a better screen.
No.
I just can't justify that at all.
Is your current graphics card up to running it as well?
What they've said is that if you have an existing Vive, if your hardware can run a Vive at the moment, then it will also run the Vive Pro. I think it's something to do with the fact that they super sample when they're rendering to the Vive. So using the Vive Pro, you're not actually asking the hardware to do any more work because it's just using more of the information that the current one throws away.
Oh, well, that's something, because the cost of graphics cards at the moment is it's a bit high.
Yeah, that's cryptocurrency mining, isn't it? It's just
the
price of graphics cards is about twice the recommended retail price at the moment it's selling for.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's insane. So that's the Vive. And the only thing I had was, is it too soon to talk about the next generation of consoles when we'll start to see some news on those? Because the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One are 5 years old now.
Yeah, well, I think the PlayStation 4's 6 years old now, isn't it? Was it 2012?
Oh, was it? I thought it was 2013. I could be wrong. So I'll take your word on that.
I'm not sure.
They have both just had the hardware refresh, though.
Well, even that was a year ago.
Yeah, but if you think about the last cycle
So it
between
was,
the
yeah.
PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4, that was 7 years. So we're heading towards that kind of time frame now. But
I
it's all
think,
very quiet.
yeah,
It
I
is very
think they've
quiet,
got.
I don't know if Microsoft is hoping to try and extend stuff with the Xbox One X. And at the moment, every game you can play on the standard Xbox One and the S and the X. And they've said that's going to continue for the future, but I don't know if I believe them or not. I don't know if at some point then you're going to start seeing games that are not just enhanced for the X, but only really run on the X.
Yeah, I think they've all been saying as well, and I think Nintendo alluded to the same thing, that basically they just want to keep the same hardware but just make it more powerful. So, when there is a next generation, it's more like when you get a new iPhone. Basically, it's the same as the old iPhone, but it's faster with more memory. So pretty much everything would be automatically compatible. It's just that newer stuff that comes out may not run on some of the older hardware. And that's probably a better way for them to do it in the long run. There's a bit less in terms of research and development. There's not the massive cost involved. And when people upgrade, they've already got a library of games, especially when they're all online, all digital games as well. It kind of solves some
my
of the
concern is that that doesn't really work on consoles, though. And there's a good example recently of the new Nintendo 3DS, because they brought in more powerful hardware that you could run all existing 3DS games on, but they did allow the companies to bring out games that would only run on the new 3DS, and you could probably count those games on two hands.
On one hand,
because
probably.
The user base for the new version is much lower than the user base for the old version.
That's true. But if it had a longer tail, I mean, the new Nintendo 3DS came out quite close to the Switch, really. Certainly once the Switch had been announced, anyway. But if you imagine it being a bigger jump, because it wasn't that much of a jump at all, really. So it was a bigger jump. It would have higher resolution screens. It would have more onboard storage and so on, rather than just be something that looked virtually exactly the same. It's just that in some games the frame rate was slightly better. Do you see? And then I think it might be different then. There's also the fact that I think this is what Microsoft and Sony are hoping for. Whether that'll happen or not, I don't know. I don't know what the uptake of the Xbox One X is, or the PlayStation 4 Pro is. I suspect perhaps not quite as high as they were hoping.
I mean, at the moment, I would be, as we've already mentioned, the cost of graphics cards is crazy at the moment, and it would actually be tempting for me, if a new console came out, to actually think about buying a new console rather than continuing to upgrade my PC just because of the costs involved.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing that Microsoft have kind of bet on as well, isn't it? In the games that you buy on, whatever they call it, it's not games for live Windows, they've changed it, isn't it? Xbox on Windows Xbox, whatever it is. Games you buy on there and games you buy on your Xbox work on your PC and they work on your Xbox. You get one license for both. So they're essentially marketing the Xbox One X, at least, as a pretty powerful PC to play games on. Or at least that seems that way to me.
Of course, they're releasing XL Xbox One.
It's only a matter of time. Yeah.
I mean, the big selling point of both the PlayStation and the Xbox new iterations really are the availability of a 4K TV, which I don't think has huge market penetration yet as well. So they may well just be holding back a bit until, higher resolution TVs become a bit more ubiquitous, if that's the big selling point they have.
Well, also, if you're going 4K with the new consoles, then you're also going to be looking at having incredibly high graphics card prices still, because the requirements to push 4K is still cutting edge, really.
Yeah. I think some of the games that are doing it at the moment are faking it to some degree, by either upscaling or other tricks. I'm sure some do, but it seems the way that it's not quite 4K properly. Certainly not on the PlayStation 4 Pro, anyway. Maybe it's a bit different on the Xbox One X, but. Yeah. So anyway, to answer your question about is it too soon, I think it's a little bit too soon. I would suspect that if there is anything coming, it might be E3 or thereabouts next year rather than this year. I think it's been too soon after current releases. Also, there's the effect that the Switch has had I think that sold a lot better than both Sony and Microsoft expected. I think they were hoping it was going to go the way of the Wii U, and you know how Sony and Microsoft like to jump on board pretty much everything that Nintendo does. They may have possibly gone back to the drawing board with their designs now to maybe try and make something, I don't know, portable or something that's a hybrid or, you know, something. I don't know.
Yes,
it's quite tricky to know where to go.
PlayStation Vita 2.
Yeah. But I mean, if you think about it, if they released something that had the power of a PlayStation 4 that could be docked onto a TV,
I'd be all over that.
That would be interesting, wouldn't it?
Yep.
Especially if you could play all the PlayStation 4 games that I've already got in my library.
Yeah, exactly. So I'd be amazed if they hadn't at least considered that. They're probably working on prototypes. Whether they ever see light of day, you know, they're bound to be doing something with that, surely.
It must be quite hard to know which way to go with it, as you say, because you can either go the Switch route and have the tablet come plugging into a dock for your TV, but then you've also got the PlayStation VR route and the Oculus Go route where you have a headset that you put on and you have your games on that. And I guess trying to balance between the two or trying to find a hybrid of everything must be pretty tough.
Well, yeah, if you think about it, if you've got a Vita-sized console that's as powerful as a PlayStation 4, then that's your wireless headset, isn't it, for VR?
Yeah.
Yeah, potentially.
Just stick that in your pocket and that's it. You know. Anyway, so we will.
Let's start a Kickstarter.
yeah, maybe. Okay, Tim, any news?
Yes, a couple of things that are sort of related. First of all, I don't know if you've had a chance to try it, but PUBG, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, has come out on mobile in the last week.
No,
it was
I have
out
not.
in China previously, but now it's come out in Europe and across America and so on. And it is largely unplayable for two reasons. Firstly, because
There's a surprise.
mobile games.
There's no
It's a
controls.
mobile game, so therefore has a virtual keypad, virtual joypads, and is really difficult to actually control. And secondly, because obviously people playing on mobiles have huge amounts of lag and bad connections and drop connections, and it's pretty much impossible, from my experience, to actually complete a game.
Right.
Now, what's quite interesting is that when you first start, it doesn't seem to have these problems. And one of the reasons for that is that when you first start, you are mostly playing against bots. I think there are a couple of other people on the map with you, but you're mainly playing against bots so that they can kind of lead you into the game nice and gently. But once you've got past that stage, then it's pretty rare, in my experience, to complete a game. And that's when I'm playing kind of on Wi-Fi at home or whatever. So I've sort of given up on that. However, of course, that's going to sell huge amounts. Well, it's not even going to sell it because it's a free-to-play game, so it's going to have huge numbers of downloads.
So where's the money? Obviously, it's microtransactions of some kind.
Obviously, it's in buying things like nice caps and stuff for your player to wear. I'm sure that they will make huge amounts of money from people who are vain enough to do so. People who buy things like kind of elite ship skins and stuff like that.
Well, if they're funding everybody else to play for free, then I don't care.
No, absolutely, and I think this is something that I've found over the last few years, that my spending on games has probably gone down simply because things like 2 dots are given to me for free in the hope that I might, in my 1,200 levels, I might go and buy some of their power-ups, which I haven't done so, but other people obviously do.
Yeah.
Now, that's a kind of a valid business model. Obviously, it's a bit different to the way that PUBG was sold on the Xbox One. It'll be interesting to see what is more successful for them.
Yeah.
And talking about Xbox One and server problems, Sea of Thieves came out in the last week. Sea of Thieves is Rare's latest game. They've been working on it for years and years. It's basically a massively multiplayer online pirate game, and obviously they had, I think, 3 or 4 betas where they tested out the servers, had lots of people playing for free on it, so they could make sure they got the demand right, which obviously meant that when it launched on Tuesday, I think, then it crashed and nobody could get on for ages, and it's generally been a bit of a disaster.
If only things like this had happened before and people could learn from how they went wrong.
No, it is unprecedented for a large game to come out and for there to be server issues.
Unbelievable.
So is this Sea of Thieves? I saw a quick YouTube video on it, but that's literally all I've seen. Is it a free-to-play game, or is it something you buy?
No. You do buy it. Interestingly, it's it is a full-price game. And I don't know if there are microtransactions in it actually, but what Microsoft have done is to use it as a massive advert for their Game Pass service. The Game Pass service is where you spend, I think it's £7 a month, and you have access to a very large library of not just Microsoft but other Xbox games.
Yeah, it's Netflix for the Xbox games, basically. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, obviously you have to download all the games in order to play them, but you can play whatever you like. And Microsoft announced that starting with Sea of Thieves, every Microsoft published exclusive Xbox game is going to be available on Game Pass on the day it's released. Which obviously means that if someone decides that they want to try out Crackdown 3 in a few months when it's released, and they don't want to spend £50 on it, they can go and spend £14 for 2 months worth of Game Pass, probably complete the game there, and if then they're not going to want to be playing it after that, then they're quids in.
So this brings up another interesting topic that I've just considered, which is with these Game Passes and Vive ports and things, how's that going to tally in with the official charts, including digital downloads?
Well, it's not, because the thing is, that people are not buying it. The charts are about buying a game, and with Game Pass, people are not buying it. Now, what you might have is something where they have a chart of downloads, and so the music charts do have streaming on there. So every time someone streams it, then they get a 0.01% of a sale or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
But still, it's included in there. So they could include it like that, but that would again involve Microsoft releasing a lot of data about what people are playing. I'm not sure that they'd be willing to do so.
No, there is another issue with it as well, in that how long are these games available on Game Pass?
Yes. That is true.
Because if it's a long game, so if I know it isn't, but if, for example, Elite Dangerous was on there, you're not going to finish that in 2 months. So have they actually said how long anything would be on there? Will it differ from game to game?
I think it differs from game to game. I'm not sure they've actually taken anything off yet.
Okay, but it's not been going all that long, though, has it?
A certain amount of time.
Yeah.
Mm. But even having said this, Sea of Thieves did come in at number 1 on the charts this week, and that's currently not including downloads. So that is a pretty good showing. Actually, the charts this week are quite exciting because the top 4 games are all new entries. The Sea of Thieves, A Way Out, which is the co-op prison break game from the developers of Brothers.
Yeah.
Then you've got Ni no Kuni 2. And then you've got Assassin's Creed Road Remastered.
I didn't realise that would have done. Well, mind you, I suppose there's an awful lot of people didn't get a chance to play it, did they? Because it was it
came out on the previous generation after the new one had started. Yeah,
sure. And I was going to say there was no PC version, but then that wouldn't have counted anyway because downloads don't count. But
I think there was a PC version.
Oh, was there?
Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, maybe.
But maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
So anyway, that was my news.
Okay. Things that we've been playing, and I will go first, mainly because there's 2 things that other people have been playing as well. So first of those I mention is Assassin's Creed Chronicles China. So there is a set of 3 of these games. There's China and Russia and India, I believe, and they're all spin-offs of the Assassin's Creed series. They're 2.5D games mostly, and China, at least, plays very, very similar to the original Prince of Persia. And I mean the original 8-bit Prince of Persia. It feels an awful lot like that in terms of the sword play. But it also is quite a lot like, I don't know if anybody else played it, the Shinobi game on the 3DS.
On the 3DS, yes.
Yeah, it feels a lot like that as well, in terms of the clambering around stuff and things like that. So, so it reminded me a lot of a few other games. To start with, the plot on it is rubbish. It's just a generic revenge story. It started out so well because, I mean, just in case you didn't know, it carries on from the end of Ezio's trilogy in the mainline Assassin's Creed series. I can't even remember the name of the girl you play as in it, but Ezio trained her, and this is her returning to China with her new assassinating skills to take revenge on various Chinese people who've killed off all the Brotherhood. It's rubbish, that bit, basically.
I mean, to be honest, the plot is rubbish.
Yeah.
And it's got very little to do with Assassin's Creed. I mean, the stuff that they've put in there is really crowbarred in just to try and get it to have the Assassin's Creed name on the front. I mean, they mention the Templars a couple of times.
Yeah.
They mention Ezio.
Yeah.
They mention her going over to Italy.
Yeah. But
there's nothing really Assassin's Creed about it at all.
No, there isn't really. But what is good though is the gameplay is really quite good fun.
Yes.
The hide and seek, and you hide in the shadows, and you kind of like hang off off walls and grab people through windows and stuff like that. That's all quite good. You whistle and get people to come over to you or away from you or whatever, and stuff like that. Even the bits there's 2 or 3 levels that are a bit like endless runner games, but obviously not endless running, where there's like the entire port is on fire and you have to escape from there, and there's a building you have to escape from and stuff. They suffer from the usual things that endless runners do, in that you don't always know what's coming, and you kind of it's a bit of a memory test. But they were, they're not too long, they're not too difficult, and they're quite good fun. And it all feels really fluid as well, the way that you jump around and you do the climbing, and you jump from platform to platform and clamber along the ceiling and stuff like that. That's all good.
What I was very impressed with is that even though it is largely a 2D game, set on a 2D plane, you do come out and go in a bit, but there are very often many ways of doing a certain section.
Yeah.
So you can choose to try and go in not all guns blazing, all swords shining, and so on.
Yeah.
To just try and kill all the guards, or you can try and sneak around a different way.
Yeah, and they actually reward you differently depending on which one you do, because you can go in as a brawler, or you can go in as stealth, and you can still get like the maximum score for the level depending on which way you go.
Mm.
So yeah, it was good, but I don't know. I'm not sure I'm going to bother with the Russia and the India episodes unless I run out of things to play. I'd heard that the China one was the best one. So have you played the other two?
I haven't, no, and I'm only I think 2/3 through the China one.
Yeah.
I think I probably will play the other two, but not immediately.
No.
Last time I was on the podcast, I talked about playing Uncharted 2 and finding it was going on a bit too long, but that was largely because I'd played Uncharted 1 first.
Yeah.
I think if you were to continue from China onto Russia, then it would start to drag a bit. So I think I might leave a bit of a gap between them.
Yeah, I think
are they like full games? The China, or are they like little? There's like 4 or 5 levels each.
Well, they sold them all separately, and each one's about 6 to 8 hours long, maybe a bit longer.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so they're full, but they then sold them as a trilogy. They all came out roughly at the same time as well.
So they came out at full price each, or were they like a?
No, I think
they're about 10 of each, I think.
Yeah, I think even when they came out, they were about 15 maybe, but I mean the trilogy has been 10 or 12 quid a few times now on PSN. I'd imagine it's been cheaper still probably on Steam or whatever, but yeah, I mean if it is just a continuation of the same thing in 2 more games, I'd need a gap between them. But from what I've read, China was the best one to go to play if you're only going to do one, and that was the one I went with first. But I was saying, so it's not a terrible game. It's a rubbish Assassin's Creed game. It's got an awful plot, but it's fun to play. So yeah, there you are.
I'd agree with you there.
Yeah. So there's that, and then another game which Choobs has been playing as well is Dragon Quest Builders.
Oh yes.
On the Switch. So I know it's been on other platforms before, but obviously they don't count anymore now the Switch is out. And I was never going to buy this. I've played a few Dragon Quest spin-offs before, not really the actual mainline series, and some of them have been quite good, like Rocket Slime in the past. That was good, and a few others. But this, looking at it and being quite cynical, it's just Minecraft. It's third person instead of first person, but it's basically Minecraft. Until I played the demo, And once I played the demo, you realise, yes, okay, so you do like smack rocks with swords, and you do get things to build with, and there is a crafting table, and you do make weapons on it and furniture on it, and windows and tables and doors and whatnot. But there's a purpose to it. So whereas Minecraft is make your own fun, this is to an extent make your own fun, but only if you want to. The rest of it is go here, do this, build these things over here, help these people, and go and find people, or just go and wander out on your own and explore and find new things to make stuff with.
Yeah, and with really solid combat and really solid RPG elements.
Absolutely, yeah. So you actually feel like you're progressing. I mean, in Minecraft, eventually, I know you start off with your wooden sword or whatever, and then you get a stone sword, and you get a metal sword, and then you get a diamond sword or whatever at the end. It's not really the same. This is like proper. You actually see your city get bigger, and more people move into your city, and they do things, and they make stuff for you as well, and they give you advice and missions and stuff, and it just gets bigger and bigger. And I found myself doing more of the just creating stuff for the sake of creating stuff, when I was expecting to just play through as a straight RPG with building when necessary. But I've gone and built like 3-story buildings with bedrooms, and then I've furnished the bedrooms, and then I've hated myself for doing it.
Well, you've piqued my interest, because I played a lot of Minecraft when it was the first couple of years. I played a lot of Minecraft, but like you say, I kind of got bored of the being aimless and not really having any objectives in the game apart from the ones you impose on yourself.
Sure.
So I started playing a lot of the adventure maps that people had made that kind of had stories in them and missions that you could do. So this sounds really interesting to me. I'm very interested. Yeah.
Well, to build a little on what deKay said. All of that stuff, the adventure elements and so on that you got in the demo did get my interest going. And then I heard one little snippet of news from the publisher, and that is that it's the first in a series, and the saves are transferable forward into the next episodes.
Yes, I've heard there is a sequel coming. I didn't know that, though.
Yeah, and that just took the whole thing to a new level. I don't know if it's whole cities or characters or progress or what that's moving, but
it'll just be your name now. You watch.
Yeah, probably. I've just jinxed it. But
it'd be like in the Shenmue. You'll start the game and then all your money will be stolen.
Yeah.
It grabbed me from the very start of the demo, even the tutorial part. It felt like all the good bits, the creativity of Minecraft, but from a developer who has a track record of producing just really solid RPGs. Everything feels weighty. There's nothing kind of indie about it. It's solid and polished. Yeah.
So that just leaves the question, then, do I get it on the Switch or the PlayStation 4? Because I don't have either console.
Well, you should get a Switch. Why have you not got a Switch? There's a PC version of it surely as well. I can't remember. But there must be other versions of it available elsewhere, I'm sure.
Oh, if it's on PC, that would solve a lot of issues.
Oh, I'm sure it is. If it isn't, get a Switch. That'll solve everything. And you can strap the Switch to your face as well, then. That'd be great.
Well, the thing is, though, that so much of it is accessible for a 10-minute bus journey, because you may be doing some great big overarching quest, but you're going to need 10 units of whichever resource, and you can just nip through a portal, gank some monsters, take the resources, nip back, save, and get off the bus. So there are definite advantages to getting it on Switch, has to be said.
So I mean, I don't know how far through you are. I've just killed the golem in chapter 1, and it seemed to imply just before I killed him, this is it, this is the end. You just need to defeat him, and that's everything. That's all done. So I did that, and they went, oh look, there's a light over there at a mountain. So they've got that to do next, although not before I've made some more windows, because some of my rooms I can't see in. So obviously that's important. But how far through are you?
I'm not very far. I've only just got schematics for castle walls and that kind of thing.
Oh right, yeah.
So really just starting out. The problem being that it's just so pretty and there's so many things to go and look at.
Yeah. You have to force yourself to follow the story really sometimes. Yeah. Otherwise you just waste well, it's not even wasted really, but you seem to waste so much time doing stuff for yourself rather than stuff for everyone else.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that was a surprise, and even more of a surprise, I went and bought the full game and actually, all that kind of thing as well, without even waiting for it to go down in price. Look at that. So that was good. And then the other main thing I've been playing recently, in fact, I lost an entire weekend to it, is Vostok Inc. on the Switch. I think there's also various other versions, but again, it's best on the Switch because it's a Switch. And Vostok Inc. it's like a cross between Cookie Clicker and Blasteroids.
Okay,
which
something I never thought I'd hear.
No, it gets even better. Anyway, so you have this solar system, which is our solar system, in fact, but there are other ones you get to later on. And you fly your ship to the planets within it, and then you land on the planet and you build things on the planet, buildings, and all these buildings generate you money, same as a Cookie Clicker. Okay, so you buy better buildings with more money, and they generate more money in turn, and so on and so forth. Okay. But obviously you can do this on each planet, so you build some cheap stuff on each planet, and then when you've got a bit more money, then go back to all the planets again and spend a bit more money and improve all those, and the whole time your overall money generation keeps going up. But when you're flying between the planets, aliens attack, and there's asteroids that get in your way. So this is where it's Blasteroids on the way, you see.
This sounds a lot like Elite Dangerous to me.
In 2D perhaps, with sort of, instead of trading, it's got building. So maybe, yeah. Anyway, so you shoot the aliens, and they come in various different attack formations and types and whatever, but none of them are particularly difficult. But when you kill those, they give you money as well. So usually not as much as you get from the planets, but it's basically, if you're waiting to get another upgrade and you don't have enough money, you fly around for a bit, shoot some aliens, make a bit of money that way, and eventually you got enough money, and then you go back. So instead of with a Cookie Clicker, you just put the tab somewhere else on your computer and come back to it 3 hours later and hope you got enough money. This gives you something to do in the meantime. Okay. But there's a bit of purpose to that as well. So you can spend some of your money, instead of spending it on the planets, you can then upgrade your ship, so you can make it fly faster, make it so that when you boost you use less energy, so you got more health, so you got better weapons, and there's a combination weapon system. You've got 3 weapon slots and 3 weapon types, and then if you use different weapon types in each slots, you generate different weapons. So if you choose missiles, you have missiles. If you have missiles and more missiles, you get bigger missiles. If you choose missiles and bullets, I think you get a love gun, which makes enemies attack other enemies. And then one particular combination gives you the best gun of all, which is a unicorn gun. So you shoot unicorns. Of course. Yeah.
So is there actually an end to the game?
Yeah, there is. So in the solar system, there is a boss in the solar system. When you get to generate a certain amount of money, the boss goes, all right, you've come in here, you've made all your fast food joints and everything. We've had enough now. We're actually sending the big boy in to come and take you down. And then you beat the boss, and then you unlock a warp to the next solar system. And then you move on, and then there's that. I think there's 6, maybe 7 solar systems. So obviously there is a final boss. You beat the final boss eventually, and that's it. You've won the game. You can still carry on, of course, because there's always more money to be made, and there's a few more upgrades and stuff. So, but yes, there is an end, but obviously there's a bit more after that. But then there's a bit more to it again. So there's another side to it in that it's a business, okay? I mean, it's Vostok Inc., so it's a business. And you can find managers. Okay, so usually, sometimes when you shoot aliens, managers get left behind, or they are floating around space, and you come across them. And when you get a manager, they give a 3% bonus to your money generation. So get enough of them, and obviously it makes a big difference. So at one point, I was getting over 200% extra simply because I had so many managers.
So let me get this straight. You go and shoot an enemy ship.
Yeah.
It releases a person floating through space, and you pick them up.
They're stowaways, apparently. So
they're called managers and not slaves.
No, they're stowaways, not slaves. Yeah. Okay. Anyway.
I hear the words you're saying, but
they're middle managers. Anyway. Okay.
No, because if they're middle managers, you wouldn't get a 3% increase
anyway
in productivity.
I think it's being slightly sarcastic in how it uses managers, because on top of that, there are also executives that you find, okay? And the executives appear on a separate screen within your pause menu, and they are mostly laying around in hot tubs, or drinking champagne, or watching telly, or doing things that executives that work hard do. And the executives give you a variable bonus in how much money you're generating, okay? So the way they generate more is you keep them happy, and you keep them happy by giving them stuff, and you give them stuff like they're a Tamagotchi. So each of them has their own little virtual pet game where you give them expensive items or food, and that keeps them happy for a bit. Or alternatively, they have a mini game that you can play, and so these mini games, each executive has their own each executive has their own mini game, and one of them is kind of like a they're all like Game & Watch type games for the most part. So there's like a Formula 1 racing type thing, there's a night driver thing, there's something that's a bit like Gallagher, and so on. There's one which is quite a good LCD version of Doom that you can play. And again, it's more things you can use to kill the time while you're waiting for your money to generate, with the benefit of, if you do well, you actually generate more money as well. Basically what the developers have done, have got a big bucket, and they've chucked every game they can think of in a big bucket, and they've stirred it all up and poured it out and hoped that something would work. And somehow, even though what I'm describing is nonsense, it's brilliant. And it's always kind of like, it's one of those games where it's kind of like, I'm just going to play for a little bit longer just to get enough to unlock the next thing. And then once you've unlocked the next thing, and it's given a massive boost to your money generation, you've just gone, well, actually, I'm going to put that thing on all the other planets now. And then when you've done that, then you're just a little bit off the next thing to unlock. And then next thing you know, you've lost a weekend. But thankfully, it finishes eventually. So yeah, so I can thoroughly recommend that, and there is a demo as well. So if you feel like you might be the kind of person who may become addicted to this sort of game, then I would recommend you don't download the demo. Because
I'm not going within 100 feet of it.
No, helpfully the demo. I've not played the demo. I just went straight in because I knew I'd be able to stop any time, which I couldn't. But the demo helpfully stops at something like 999,999 for your money, so you never get your first million, and then you have to buy the game just to get the satisfaction of making your first million. So it's quite cruel that way. But yeah. So anyway, that's brilliant, and all go and buy that now. That's me then. So that's what I've been playing. Luffer then. So tell us what happened with Catwoman, because you did tell us what was going to happen with Catwoman. And I'm desperate to find out what happened with Catwoman.
In the last podcast, I think it was Neil asked the question: have we played the Batman series? Did we sleep with Catwoman? And are these save games transferable to the new or to the next game? I can now answer yes to both those points.
So you took one for the team, and
I did. As soon as the podcast had finished, in fact, I downloaded the first game. And overall, very enjoyable game, I must say. So I can highly recommend it to anyone that hasn't played it. If you've played the Telltale game series before, like The Walking Dead or what other ones they do, the Back to the Future trilogies and things like that, then it follows a very similar kind of formula. But in this version of Batman, it kind of focuses on Bruce Wayne more than Batman. It's more about his character than the Batman character. I mean, there's still a lot of Batman in it, but the story is more concentrated around Bruce's storyline. And it doesn't actually follow canon, really. It's got its own offshoot. So that allows for some pretty interesting character developments. And there will be some slight spoilers here, but I try not to say anything that will ruin the game. But obviously, I can't really talk about it without.
But you've already spoiled it by saying that Bruce Wayne was Batman. I mean, we didn't know that.
That is one slight thing that niggles me in the second game that I'll mention now, is that for some reason, everyone you speak to seems to know who you are, which is a bit weird. There's that 5 different characters, and they all know that Bruce Wayne is Batman, and that just confuses me a little bit. But anyway, so yeah, in the first game, you find out that Bruce Wayne's parents were not victims of an innocent mugging. It was actually an assassination, because his father was caught up with the mafia, and that basically all the money that Bruce has inherited has come from criminal proceeds. And it gives a great edge to his character, because he's kind of conflicted, because he's got all this money that he's using for good as Batman with all his technology, but now he knows that all the money that he's got has come from dodgy, shady dealings, and everything he's been led to believe up to now was a lie about his parents, and the that they weren't who he thought they were.
Okay.
So that's a great little twist on the story of Bruce Wayne there, and you kind of follow that through the whole game. And then you've also got the villains as well. So Cobblepot, who most people know more better as the Penguin, he's very much reimagined in this. He's a much subtler villain than the big fat bloke who wanders around with a cigarette in his mouth. So in this game, he's Bruce's childhood friend, but Cobblepot's family weren't criminals. So he is kind of reversed, because I believe in actual Batman canon that Cobblepot was brought up in a pretty villainous family. I could be wrong, but
I think it depends which canon, because it's changed quite a few times. But certainly in some it was, yeah.
So in this version, Bruce and Cobblepot were childhood friends. They're like best friends at school and growing up together. But Cobblepot's family lost all their wealth because of Bruce's parents and their mafia connections. So in this version, he's kind of out for revenge to get his money back and take his revenge out on Bruce. And on some levels, you can kind of sympathise with the Penguin in this situation, but he's written really well. He's kind of a backstabbing and plotting villain rather than outright evil. And it's a very, very clever twist on the Cobblepot and Penguin character, I think. But one of the obviously the big selling point of Telltale games is that you can kind of choose your own adventure kind of thing, where the decisions you make in the game will affect how it progresses in future episodes. And I mean, if you've played a Telltale game before, you know that's not strictly true. I mean, they make small differences. So, for example, there are points in the game where it says you need to go and see this person now to work out something. Do you want to go and see them as Bruce Wayne, or do you want to go and see them as Batman? And obviously, if you go and see them as Batman, then one scene will play out. And if you go and see them as Bruce Wayne, a slightly different scene will play out. But although the different scenes are you as a different character, essentially what happens in the scene is still exactly the same. And the outcome at the end of it will be the same. It's just that little one scene as to whether you went as Bruce or Batman is the only bit that's really different.
Right.
But there are a couple of things that do carry on. So again, it's a little bit of a spoiler, but you with what's his name, Two-Face is in it in this game, and there's a point where you can either make him the Two-Face, as in the real Two-Face that we know, or you can make a certain decision that means he won't become Two-Face, but the character still stays in the game.
Okay.
So regardless of whether you made him become Two-Face or not, the same story still carries on. He's just not Two-Face. He's this other character. They're very superficial changes, which is kind of understandable, because I mean, if every decision you made in the game affected every other decision in the game, then they'd never be able to program and do all the various animations and voice acting, and there'd be millions and millions of combinations they have to keep track of.
That sounds a bit disappointing though. I mean, I haven't played many Telltale games, but I did play the original Walking Dead. And I remember that decisions that you made in that did affect the story, or at least felt like it.
Well, they feel like they do, but in The Walking Dead in particular, there's one thing that strikes that I can remember from The Walking Dead was that quite early on, I think either episode 2 or 3 of the game, you have to decide whether you're going to kill a woman or let her die, or let the bloke live, or basically one of them is going to die. You have to choose which one's going to live. And if you let the woman live, then in the next episode, within about the first 5 minutes, she dies. And if you let the bloke live, then in the next episode, in the next 5 minutes, he dies. So really, it didn't, whether you let her live or him live, it didn't make any difference, because in the next episode, whichever one you let live died. So they both died anyway. It doesn't really, your choices don't really have any bearing on the actual way the story is going to play out. It's basically an interactive novel, isn't it? A comic book.
Yeah. And
to be fair, the plot had me hooked the whole way through. There are plenty of twists and turns, and for the most part, it's fairly unpredictable what's going to happen. And I definitely found myself wanting to play the next episode. So if you want a game to play, it's thoroughly enjoyable. There are obviously some downsides to it, and if you've played any of the Telltale games before, you're going to know what they are, because they're still true for the new Batman game as they were for the other ones. So as I said, there's limited interaction. It's there's hardly anything for you to do. You just go from one place to the next, speak to someone, make a choice, the choice you make makes a little difference, but they're there. So there is some interaction, but it's very limited. And there are quick time events which don't seem to have any consequence. So if you fail the quick time event, then the thing will still happen even though you failed it. And if you fail them, then, or if you do them, then it happens anyway. So whether you fail it or complete the quick time event doesn't really seem to have any bearing, unless it's a major point and then you die.
It sounds like there's a lot of things which only make a difference in the minute, but don't actually make any difference in the hour, if you see what I mean. So
yeah,
it sounds like they could save an awful lot of trouble by just cutting the player out and making an animation.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot to be said for that. It really is very, very light on the actual interactive aspects, but it is fun. So it's I don't want to be too critical of it because I've enjoyed playing the game, but there are these glaring issues with the game where you think, well, it doesn't matter what I do now because it's still going to end up happening regardless.
Yeah, I've played quite a few Telltale games. I've mentioned it on here before as well, but the way it seems to be, the way they seem to be going is the game elements seem to be reducing, certainly in complexity. So they're moving more towards QTEs or just simple choices. Puzzles and things are disappearing, but the stories appear to be improving. So it is going more towards an interactive novel than an actual proper video game.
Very much. So, I mean, this is a perfect example. The plot and the story and the voice acting and the writing is all first class as far as I'm concerned. I've thoroughly enjoyed all that side of it. As you said, there really are. There's virtually no puzzle solving in this game at all. There are these detective sequences that you have to go through where there are several like hotspots that you can go and look at, and then you have to link them like one thing to another. So you might, I mean, this isn't an actual example, but it's a very similar sort of thing. So you'll find a gang member that's dead on the floor with a bullet hole in him, and then you'll find a gun. And it's like, right, so I'm going to link the gun to the bloke with the bullet hole. It's like, yes, you've solved the puzzle. Well done. And it's like, well, wasn't really that difficult, was it? So, there's that kind of interactive, which is very superficial. So there's not really anything to solve. You're just connecting the dots on the screen to then progress to the next part. And in the second game, because there's two. The first game is 5 episodes. The second game is 5 episodes. The 5th episode of the second game hasn't been released yet, so I've only played up to the 4th episode. So I'm waiting for the 5th episode, which is due any day now. I think. I don't know. I think by the end of the month it's supposed to be out. But in the second game, they have this thing where you pick things up and they go in your inventory, but you never actually use them for anything. So it's all a bit weird. Like, you now have this in your inventory.
By the end of the game, you've got Batman walking around with massive pockets.
Yeah, but there's no way of accessing your inventory or using the things in your inventory, so it all just seems completely pointless. It's like, yes, I've now got this ID card in my inventory, but
so he's basically a kleptomaniac. That's the
So there's that, and as I say, ultimately your decisions don't matter. So that's kind of the biggest disappointment, really, if you're looking for an interactive thing.
But you haven't answered the cat. I'm not interested, but obviously our listener is. You haven't answered the Catwoman question.
Yes, slept with her. Yep, that's all fine. That's it was great.
Good. Well done.
Sound impressed.
It's very well done though. The whole sequence is quite well done. So give it a go. Whether you want to sleep with Catwoman or not, it's worth playing.
So it doesn't involve a giant unicorn like in The Witcher, then?
What?
No.
Good. This is good.
So moving swiftly on from that smutty conversation, I've also been playing Stage 9, which is on PC. And if anyone doesn't know what that is, it's basically a virtual recreation of the Enterprise, Star Trek, the Enterprise D.
Okay.
And it's the whole project is basically to create the entire ship. So you can go anywhere you want within the ship, to all the different quarters, to the bridge, to sick bay, to the transporter rooms, the armory, engineering. The whole ship is being modelled in, I think, is it Unity they're doing it in? I'm not sure. But they're creating the whole ship. And they've just released version 0.0.10, which is like a pre-alpha, but it's available for anyone to download and look at. And they've just read on all the lighting and various other bits and pieces, and it's thoroughly amazing. There's also a virtual reality version, so you can put your HTC Vive or Oculus Rift headset on, and you can go and walk around the bridge of the Enterprise in virtual reality.
Okay. Is it populated or?
It's populated with NPCs.
Okay.
They've got a couple of the models from the original series, from the next generation modeled in the game. So Picard's in there, and I think they've got a Data and a who's the guy in the transporter rooms?
O'Brien.
O'Brien. They've got an O'Brien model as well.
Oh, right.
Because when you start the game, you beam into the transporter room. That's where you start, and the first person you see is O'Brien at the controls, and you can wander off around the ship and go into the. And one of the clever things they've done is you can actually go to the holodeck, and if you go into the holodeck, you can choose what program to run. And in the list of programs, there are different versions of the bridges. So you can go to the original series bridge. You can go to the different bridges from the different series, because I think each different series has a slightly different bridge layout. Or you can go to a bridge from like one of the films. And then when you load the program, when you walk into the holodeck, the door shuts and then the door disappears, and then you're in the other Enterprise, and then you can open the door and walk back onto the real ship again. It's very, very clever, and I'm amazed at the progress they've made already. So if anyone has ever wanted to experience walking around the Star Trek Enterprise, then you can.
I've just started downloading it as we speak.
It does sound quite impressive. Has anybody from Star Trek actually been involved in it, or is it entirely fan made?
I believe it's entirely fan-made. I don't think they've got any backing or any kind of endorsement or anything. It's just a fully fan-made. There's a bunch of people that are involved in making it. It started out with just 2 guys about 18 months ago, I think, and they've increased their team has built up. It's all voluntary, all volunteers, and there's like a Discord channel which they discuss things about bugs and various things. But yeah, so. It's amazing. Massive props to the guys that have made this, because it's incredible what they've done so far.
I'd be interested to know what Michael Okuda thinks of it as one of the kind of designers for various things Star Trekky over the years. He must know about it, surely. Somebody would have told him about it. And it's free, you say?
It's free, yeah. I think it'll always be free, but at the moment it definitely is free.
Yeah. Well, I can't imagine them being allowed to charge for it. I think.
No, exactly. Exactly. It's just a fan project that's been done incredibly well. And also, I didn't say this, but when you're on the bridge, you can access some of the systems. So you can go to the con, and you can at the helm you can go into warp, and you can go to various locations. So at the moment they've got 2 or 3 locations. They've got Earth you can go to, you can go to Deep Space Nine, you can go to somewhere else I can't remember. Is it Jupiter Station? Is that one of the places? Maybe, I can't remember. There's about 3 or 4 locations you can go to at the moment, and because Star Trek and because people like Star Trek are into this sort of thing, they've actually calculated how long it would take to get to those places.
Of course they have.
At the various warp speeds. So if you go at warp 1 and engage at warp 1 from Earth to Deep Space Nine, it will take that long as it would do if you were to do it for real, in inverted commas, because obviously you can't do it for real.
Yeah.
And if you did it in warp 10, then it takes the same amount of time it would actually take at warp 10.
Blimey.
And you can also go to the shuttle bay. You can get on a shuttle, and you can take a shuttle out of the ship, and you can fly around the Enterprise in the shuttle. It's just incredible. It's absolutely amazing.
Oh, that sounds really interesting, actually. Yeah.
So yeah, that's me.
Okay. Choobs then.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think we've probably already covered Dragon Quest Builders, although I will just reiterate just how awesome it is. It has all the goodness of Minecraft. It has all the goodness of a decent, solid RPG. I mean, what's not to like? And it being portable on top of that, just as the icing on the cake. It's actually been my kind of lunchtime gaming session now since its release, which has been quite important because I've not actually managed to get much gaming done. It being the kind of last few weeks before the sailing season starts, I've been spending more time on sailing ships rather than spaceships.
Kind of ships? What kind of ships? What? Well, I know, but I don't know much about sailing, but I know they come in a range of sizes and types. So.
Oh, they do. I'm talking 22-foot yachts here.
Okay.
so nothing big. The quick one first would be Monster Hunter World on PS4.
Nobody said that about that before.
Which the being a dyed-in-the-wool Monster Hunter fan with multiple thousands of hours in the series, I've only actually clocked up 30 hours on this so far.
And how are you finding it compared to the other Monster Hunter games? Because my understanding of this is that it's somewhat simplified and westernized and, made it more accessible, basically, than the other ones. Is that
your
right?
Your understanding is pretty much spot on, but with a caveat. Most of the changes that have been made are quality of life things. Mm-hmm. Things that Monster Hunter players have been struggling with for years. Like traditionally, if you quaff down a potion to heal yourself, you've got to know the potion mechanic down to the pixel, because you know that there is that unskippable little, bravado animation at the end of it. You're vulnerable through the whole operation. You need to make sure you're far enough away that you're not going to get attacked while you're doing it. So there's strategy involved. In the new version, you can just quaff a potion while you're moving.
Okay.
You move slower, but you can move. You can still evade. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. It certainly makes for much tighter, much fairer gameplay. But when you have spent upwards of 3,000 hours learning the other mechanic, it can be a bit jarring. So, as a kind of long-term fan of the series, I'm probably not the right person to judge the game. Now, the gameplay itself is absolutely solid. It's not actually that much easier. I mean, quality of life things aside, the things are still big and they still hit hard. There is still a learning curve. There's still a huge amount of grind. But they've made some odd choices. For one thing, by making it open world, they've done what Monster Hunter fans have wanted for years, I think. They have made, rather than, I know that the monster always starts in Area 6 on this map, you can just go straight to Area 6, there's a monster. By making it open worlds and the monsters are all roaming freely, they have introduced that element where you do actually have to hunt the monster. But then as soon as you've detected 3 or 4 signs of the monster, all of a sudden you have a green sparkly line leading you directly to where it is, Witcher 3 style. And I get the impression that they've wanted to take that step forward to open world, and then at the last minute they've just kind of shied away from it a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, again, it may be that they found it was just a bit too difficult for the audience they were aiming for.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. Had they made it optional, I would probably have been a bit more forgiving with it. But, whether you like it or not, you're always going to have a big green thing showing you where to go next, which is mildly annoying. But that shouldn't let you, think that it's not a game you should try. It is a really, really solid game. It is bloody difficult. They have introduced the Devil Joe this week, which is actually the only creature in any video game ever that I'm actually scared of. As soon as I hear the music, I'm out of there. I mean, it's not particularly difficult to beat it. It just gives me the Wiggins. It's known as the murder pickle for a reason. But it's a really, really solid contender. It looks beautiful. It plays beautiful. The only annoyances I've found in it aren't going to be annoyances to newcomers to the series. They're going to be beneficial to new people. It is stripped down that the various combinations of weapons and gear you can get is slightly reduced. Also, there's a lot more upgradability in the gear you can make. Yeah, I mean,
more upgradability. Blimey, there seemed to be quite a bit already.
Well, I mean, the kind of the moral of the game is basically you murder a monster so that you can make a skin out of it, so that you can then go and murder its children using its parents' skin. That's kind of the idea. But there was always the case that as soon as you got to a certain rank in the game, it was traditionally low rank, high rank, and then G rank. The current one just seems to have low rank and high rank, but you get to a certain point in the game, and at that point, once you had defeated monster, L, there is no way you could kill Monster M using the same armor you had just used. You had to get a new set of armor out of the thing you just killed before you could even, survive for 10 seconds with a new beast. So you were building armor sets specifically for one actual hunt. The ready availability of armor spheres for doing upgrades now means that you can actually craft a set of armor out of the first beast you kill, which will actually do you the next 8 or 9 hunts. So the barrier to entry, if you like, has been lowered significantly. It does get just as insanely difficult later on, but that initial period is much more gentle.
And it's that they need to drag the people in, I suppose. So.
Yeah, absolutely so. And it does actually play a lot more fluidly. I mean, I know that all of you have probably tried a Monster Hunter game at one point or another and thought, my God, this is so clunky. Not because it's clunky, but because you don't know the game yet. A lot of these quality of life improvements are things like the ability to change direction when you're halfway through a swing of a greatsword, for example. That sounds like blasphemy to, a long-term fan of the franchise, but to a newcomer, it just makes perfect sense. Why wouldn't I be able to do that? So I think, on the whole, it's a very positive step for the franchise. I think it's going to secure its future outside of Japan.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned on an episode of the podcast a while back, before the game came out. In fact, I think it only maybe just been announced to release date. I can't remember. And back then we were looking at it, and it had this kind of simplification and Western, more suited for a Western audience. And there was some wondering about whether it was going to end up appearing on the Switch, or whether the Switch was going to carry on the old style Monster Hunter series. And I remember saying at the time, I said, we're going to have to see how well this one sells, because surely that will determine Capcom's route. And this sold incredibly well.
Yeah, it has. It really has.
Yeah, so I think we know where that's going now.
Yeah, I mean, you just need to drop into the gathering hall, and it is always full at any time of the day or night. And the interesting thing is it's full of people who are really, really good team players. I mean, one of the things about Monster Hunter is that with a weapon like a greatsword or a longsword or a hammer, you can be just as much a menace to your teammates as you are to the monster itself. Yeah. And I've had a lot of matches with just random players for whom this is their first Monster Hunter game, and they've got it. They've really kind of invested the time in learning the weapons. So, I think just those little quality of life improvements that they've made have taken some of the exclusivity away from the franchise, and that can only be a good thing, broadening the audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's dragged a load of new people in. It doesn't seem to have disappointed the old fans, so it's win-win, really.
Yeah, I mean, once you get over the rage of, how dare you change my game?
Yeah.
Then, it's a really, really solid title.
Yeah.
I will mention Elite Dangerous briefly. I will try and be brief, because the 3.0 initial update is huge. And this is actually the smaller of the updates that they've got planned for this year. So it was in beta for a couple of weeks, and they've added some initially cosmetic things. They've Elite Dangerous was plagued by what's become known as the beige plague, and that is that space seems largely to be populated by identical beige planets. What they have done is they've improved the procedural generation a hell of a lot, so that landable worlds, worlds with no atmosphere, now look very distinct from each other. Depending on whether it's an icy type or a rocky type, or high metal or whatever. So that kind of cosmetic thing is nice to see, that they're kind of going back and addressing things that people have been complaining about. They've completely overhauled the trading system. And made it actually usable now. Via the Galaxy map, you can get a pretty good idea of, what's going to sell well where, without actually having to refer to third-party websites, which is a big advantage. They've overhauled crime and punishment to attempt to deal with the hideous problem of the amount of gankers that there are, especially around the newbie systems. So they've introduced a kind of more intelligent reputation system, where, you know, if your reputation goes below a certain point, you will be attacked on sight in many different types of system, which is quite nice. The kind of the whole alien menace story is unloading as usual, with a whole slew of new weapons and upgrades. They've completely redone the whole engineering interface as well, to, you know, make it so that you're not quite at the mercy of RN Jesus as much as you were before. It did really surprise me when they announced that this was, you know, a free season of updates, because the number of changes that they've made is absolutely massive. And it's not all just under the hood stuff. There is a lot of interface stuff that's changed. There's a lot of stability stuff that's changed. Unfortunately, I can't really speak too much about it through experience, because I've barely been on for about 6 weeks, just due to real ships getting in the way of imaginary ships. But such is the nature of things. One thing I have had a go of, though, is they've introduced a lovely little ship called the Chieftain, which is intended to be a kind of anti-Thargoids, you know, decent long-range fighter, which is really, really nippy, has loads and loads of hard points, has a decent enough jump range that you can get to the kind of areas of space where the Thargoids are without too much difficulty. Later in the year, they're looking at introducing all kinds of new super secret stuff, but they're being very close-mouthed about it. But more interestingly, we're looking forward to E3, where it looks like we're going to be seeing some footage of the new Jurassic World game that Frontier are working on as well, which actually has me slightly more excited than the Elite Dangerous updates have been.
This isn't the one that's basically Pokemon Go, is it? Is this something else?
No, they're basically... it looks very much like Theme Park, but Jurassic Park.
Oh, yeah. They showed this, what, last year or the year before?
Yeah, they showed a trailer, but...
I thought it disappeared.
Yeah, it's well, that's Frontier for you. They do tend to keep things very close to their chest, but it looks like there's going to be some footage available for E3, which will be nice. So kind of looking forward to that one. So that pitiful haul really is my gaming for about the last 6 weeks or so.
And that just leaves Tim then.
I won't cover the last 6 weeks. I'll just cover the last week. Having said that, the first one I want to talk about is a game that I've been playing for 11 years now, which is Crackdown on the Xbox 360. And I'm pretty sure that everyone else will have played that. If not, then you should rectify that immediately. But I last played it back in 2011, going by the date on my save file. And at the time, I'd collected all the agility orbs, which were the things that are generally on top of buildings. And I'd collected, as I found out, 275 of the hidden orbs, which are the things that were inside buildings. There are 300 of those, and I decided that I was going to go and find the others. And given that there's a very large map, I decided to cheat a bit and download a map and look at where they were. And it actually only took me a couple of hours to just run around and collect them. So after, as I said, 11 years of playing the game, I finally collected all the orbs, which is a very good feeling. So that's the first one I wanted to talk about. The second one is the best game of all time, which is Populous: The Beginning.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't.
So, I mean,
it ruins everything to do with it ruins everything to do with Populous, and well, that's it.
It makes it better.
No.
So anyway, I've finally managed to get it working. I mean, basically, what happens every time I get a new computer through work, and it has to be work because there isn't a Mac version of Populous: The Beginning, and theoretically you can get it running through kind of Windows emulation and so on, but it doesn't really work very well. What happens every time I get a new computer for work is that I spend about 6 months trying to get Populous: The Beginning working on it, and finally I do get it working and I play it a lot.
See, even the game itself doesn't want you to play the game. Can you not see the problem here? That you.
The thing is that because I have this issue, and I basically have to start from the start every time. And the fact that I do this for every time I get a new computer, and I do go from the start every time, and I get to the level called Bloodlust, which is really difficult and takes me hundreds of times to complete, and still want to do that, just shows how good the game is. So, deKay, you are wrong.
You know what Einstein said about madness, don't you? The act of doing the same thing multiple times and expecting different results.
But I'm not expecting different results. I'm expecting the same result, which is for me to have a grand time playing the game.
Oh, fair enough.
Or somebody has to.
On a similar note to Andy, I want to make a recommendation for a small indie Switch game. And at the moment, that game is 50% off on the eShop. And that game is called Binaries. Now, it's a very simple game. It's a basic platformer where you have to jump over spikes and try and avoid all the obstacles as you get from one side of the stage to the other. The twist is that you are controlling two dots, a blue dot and an orange dot, at the same time. And so you basically have to find walls that you can push one up against to try and allow you to have them in different places. Blue dots cannot touch blue spikes, but they can touch orange spikes and vice versa. And it's a very clever game, infuriatingly difficult. Firstly, trying to work out how to actually complete the stage, and secondly, actually doing it. But it's really well thought out, really clever, and I do recommend that people try it out. I think it's currently £5 on the shop, so it's not going to break the bank.
So I saw you recommend this, and I had a look at it, and imagine my surprise that it rips off a game I wrote last year.
Really?
So, to a degree. So I took part in a game jam last year, and I can't remember what the theme of it was, but basically I wrote a game called Snakes When They Meet. And the point of this was the screen was split in half, and you have a snake, as in like the old style snake game, Snake. You have a snake on one side and a snake on the other side, and you control both of them at the same time. And they have a maze to get through, but obviously the maze is different on each side, but you control both of them at the same time. Okay.
It's a similar concept, and I'd like to play that game, so please do send me a link.
Yeah, well, I mean, mine was basically proof of concept because I did 4 levels, and I thought this is too difficult to spend time on making levels. So I just released it as a proof of concept. It's terrible, by the way. It's an awful game. It's badly written, and it was literally because I had an idea, and I thought I'll make something that does something with that idea, and then I thought, no, I've had enough of that, and put it away. So, yeah. I'm a brilliant games programmer, by the way, if anybody's hiring.
I have played Advanced Lawnmower Simulator.
Yeah, I wrote 2 of those, or 3 or 4. Well, many of those, yes, but
many
not the
original.
Yeah. They were better than this. In fact, that's a game I've written. Anyway, never mind. Anyway, move on.
Anyway, the main game I wanted to talk about, actually, another Assassin's Creed game, but this one is going back a few years. It's Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation, which was on the Vita. They released it as an HD version on the, I think it was was it the 360 or was it the...
it was on the PlayStation 3 at least, because that's where I played it.
Okay, PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. And for some reason that was then just called Assassin's Creed Liberation and lost the 3.
I wonder why they might have tried to hide the fact that something might be related to Assassin's Creed 3.
That was where I was about to go, yes. And to be honest, they've done a very good job of that in-game as well, trying to hide the fact it's related to Assassin's Creed 3. It's only halfway through where you have this really funny bit of the plot where you go and meet Connor for no apparent reason.
Yeah.
That relates it to Assassin's Creed 3.
It's for asset reuse, that's why.
Exactly. It's basically the same as we were talking about earlier with the Chronicles China game.
Mm-hmm.
The plot is not great. It's got basically not a lot to do with Assassin's Creed 3 or Assassin's Creed generally. At least in this one, you do have this idea of Templars to fight against. And of course, it is a 3D traditional style Assassin's Creed game. The difference is that it's much more cut down and streamlined. It's got many fewer little side quests to distract you. If you look at the map, then it's not covered in icons all over the place. And it's generally a much kind of tidier game. And obviously it's because it's on the Vita, it's not as powerful as the 360 and the PlayStation 3 were, so they had to cut it down a bit. But I actually found that I preferred it because of that, because it just felt like it was much more focused. There's not all good, unfortunately. As I said, the plot wasn't great. The combat is more complex than the previous Assassin's Creed games in the series. They don't all just wait one at a time to try and hit you. And that felt like a good step forward. The problem was that it doesn't actually feel fair, the combat, because very often you try and block something and it doesn't actually block, or it turns out that that's an unblockable hit and you should have known that before they hit you. So it just felt a little bit unfair on the combat. And there were a couple of the larger enemies, the boss enemies, where it sort of felt like I fluked them rather than knowing what strategy I should be using. So
there was one I got stuck on for ages. I can't remember what there's a guy up a tree in a tree house or something.
Yeah, that'd be a Garte, I think.
And, yes. I remember the only way I defeated him in the end is he managed to glitch through a wall and fell down and killed himself.
Pretty much. Well, he didn't glitch through a wall for me, but what he did do was to get himself stuck in a corner facing the wrong way so I could hit him from the back.
Yeah.
But basically, overall, I was quite impressed with it as a game, and it felt like a proper Assassin's Creed game on a handheld, much more than Assassin's Creed Bloodlines did, which was the PSP one, where all of the arenas were very small and there was only ever one enemy on the screen at a time. And it's definitely worth playing as you play through the series, which is what I'm currently doing, and so I'm now on to Assassin's Creed 4.
You haven't mentioned the dressing up.
I haven't mentioned it. That is a good point, and that's largely because I didn't really do it much, actually.
No, neither did I. It was mostly
so the idea of this dressing up is that you can use this to approach situations in different ways. You have 3 different personas: the assassin, the slave, and the lady. You have a female. You play as a female character, obviously. And you can choose to dress up as one of these at a time. The lady cannot jump or cannot climb, but she is much better. She's much better at calming situations down and getting into places. The assassin is generally much better at climbing and the assassinations, but the guards are on the lookout for her all the time. And a slave, which is actually the one that I played the game mostly as, can do all of the climbing and the assassinating and so on, but is more it's more hidden to guards.
Yeah, so, they don't find it a bit weird that she's in certain places. They just assume she's a slave.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So no, I thought it was a good idea, but it wasn't really developed enough, and there weren't enough areas where you could really do a very different approach depending on how you were dressed.
Yeah,
it does sound a bit a missed opportunity, doesn't it? It's a good mechanic.
Yeah, I got two things to say about this as well. It's one of the games that impressed me about the Vita originally when I first saw it. So this was at the Eurogamer Expo in or whatever year that was, 2011, 12, something, can't remember.
11, I think, yeah.
And it was just before the game itself came out, and I was really impressed with how well a Vita game could look. I hadn't considered anything could look that good at the time. I know it's been bettered since, but I hadn't seen anything at the time. So there's that. And the other thing as well is that the twist at the end of the game was a double twist.
Yes.
I won't give that away, but the first twist I saw coming, but the double twist, that I didn't see. That was... So I always like a twist at the end that I see coming that doesn't turn out to be that, something else entirely. Sort of, so that was good.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, I said earlier the plot was quite weak, as all Assassin's Creed games really are.
Yeah,
but it did tell quite a good story towards the end.
Is that you? Anything else, or
no? That's everything.
Okay, I'll move on to some listener questions, and just two and a half. this time, I'm afraid. First one from Thermal Satsuma. Are we supposed to understand what the heck this Fortnite thing is all about? No, because
what is it about?
Well, we're not 12 years old, so we don't need to know anything.
Well, you see, Fortnite is tricky because it's two different games.
Yes.
And what people tend to call Fortnite nowadays is not actually Fortnite.
Yeah.
It's the Battle Royale version, which I can't remember. Is it just called
it's Fortnite Battle Royale, isn't it?
But that's a different game to Fortnite.
PUBG, but pretty without Chinese griefers.
Well, you say pretty. I mean, it's more saturated.
Yeah,
And,
it's Warcraft,
and it's also got this funny thing where you can build platforms and stuff.
Well, that's a hanger-on from the actual game that it was supposed to be originally. So,
but every time I tried to play it, I'd kind of get stuck in a menu trying to build a platform thing and then get killed.
I don't know. I've not played it. I'm not really that interested. One thing that I'm interested, which I will mention, and I don't even know how true this is, but I heard that the people behind PUBG went to the people behind Fortnite and said, "We've got this idea for a game. Will you make it with us?" And they had a look and said no. And then PUBG came out, and then suddenly Fortnite turned into essentially a clone of PUBG, and that seemed a bit odd. But I don't know how true all of that is. But that was what had been reported to me somewhere. So
I did particularly enjoy, it's a slight tangent, but it's PUBG related. I did particularly enjoy the kind of inverted commas exploit, whereby turning your graphics setting down to the lowest detail, you can make all the cover disappear. All the grass and bushes and so on. So some poor bugger, i.e. me specifically, could be crawling across the landscape, staying in the long grass. And meanwhile, the guy standing at the side of the road has me in perfect view because he's got his graphic detail turned down.
That's brilliant.
Go figure.
So to answer the question, no. Next question from Gazimod. He says, semi-genuine question this time. Well, we're not interested in that. Should I buy Celeste even though I'm pretty awful at these?
What was that?
That was an honest reaction.
Okay, should I buy Celeste even though I'm pretty awful at these super punishing pinpoint accuracy platforming things? And even
Can I answer that one?
Well, I haven't played it, so yes.
You will die. You will actually you'll just sit there on your chair and you will die of malnutrition or thirst. Celeste is evil. It is okay. If you imagine Super Meat Boy, and then imagine that it's really, really difficult.
Because Super Meat Boy was not hard.
Celeste is quite breathtakingly evil. I got about halfway through. My son has managed to complete it, and while he was doing the final level, he was actually sitting. I didn't allow him to play it portable. He had to play it with the Pro Controller because his grip was so tight that I was concerned for the safety of his Switch. But he was actually sitting screaming while doing the last level. So if that sounds like your idea of a good time, by all means, play Celeste.
Actually, it looks really good to me. I'm just looking at it now. It looks like Super Meat Boy, which I loved.
It is insanely good, but seriously, it is Super Meat Boy ramped up to like 250.
Right, it's going on my wish list.
So something else, I don't even know if it's available on anything other than the Switch, but something else which has got parallels to Super Meat Boy is Slime San.
Oh yeah,
on the Switch. So I mean that's similar, pretty much one screen platforming. You've got a few extra gimmicks whereby you can do this kind of like dash, so you can do like an air dash or like a slightly higher jump. And you also have this thing, because you are a blob of slime, you can kind of slide through certain types of blocks as well. So you can use them to climb up or slide through. I've been playing that a bit recently as well, and I didn't really like Super Meat Boy, but I am enjoying this. So I think maybe the differences in that have helped. So if my understanding as well, it's a bit easier than Celeste. So if Celeste sounds a bit too hard for you and you like Super Meat Boy, then maybe Slime Sand might be a bit better to go towards.
Gazimod doesn't actually say in his question whether he enjoys the fact that he can't. He's pretty awful at these games. That if he actually likes failing, then he should definitely pick up Celeste.
One thing I would say about Celeste is that although it is ultimately much more grueling, punishing, and misery-inducing than Super Meat Boy is, it does ramp up in a slightly more gentle manner. I mean, Super Meat Boy is tough from the get-go, as is Celeste, but Super Meat Boy does ramp up very, very quickly.
I'll be fair, you can get at least 3 screens into Super Meat Boy before it starts getting hard.
Yeah. I mean, Celeste, you'll get a good bit further than that, but you are much more likely to, put it this way: the chances of you being the guy at the top of the church tower with the high-powered rifle screaming, "It was Celeste that made me do it," it's pretty high chances.
So what are we going to say? Yes or no?
Hell, go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to support these developers.
It's dead cheap. It is. You will not. I mean, okay, the rage is incredible, but it does the one thing that Super Meat Boy does incredibly well, and that is it is never ever unfair.
Yeah.
Every time you die, and you die all the time, it's your own fault. It doesn't hide anything from you. But I think if you're under 30 years old, you're probably fine. Anything above that, you don't have the reactions for it.
No, or the eyesight. Or the, Okay. And one final question that came in last minute, and this is from you, Luffer, what you listen as well as take part. Well done. Can we stop recording now? Yes, we can.
Actually, no.
Why not? What's happening now?
Because I was going to add another bit of news and I forgot to put it in the thing, but I've got another bit of news.
Okay.
It's just a little...
Let's just stop and start again.
Okay. Or just record the whole thing again.
Scratch the whole lot,
yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Nobody said anything interesting anyway. It's a very, very small thing. I don't know if any of you have played a game on the Switch called Butcher.
I've seen it but not played it.
It's lovely. It's basically like a kind of 2D side-scrolling Doom. It's brutally difficult. It's gory, pixely graphics. It's lovely. But the guy who's developing that is currently developing a thing called Carrion, which I'm hoping is going to be on the Switch. He hasn't announced any platforms yet. And it's a kind of reverse... If you search for Carrion game, you'll find it. It's a kind of reverse survival horror where you play the monster.
Yes, I did see that. I didn't realise the relationship to the other game, but yeah.
It has the most excruciatingly hideous visuals I've ever seen in a video game ever.
And so many entrails. Just entrails everywhere.
It is well worth just Googling Carrion game. First link is an article to Eurogamer. Have a look. It's horrible, but I'm all over that when it's out.
Yeah. Okay.
We can stop recording.
We can stop recording now. Okay. Well, thanks to everyone for listening, and thanks to the 3 of you for joining me and staying up late. I know it's a school night. That only affects me. If anybody would like to send us any comments or any questions,
money.
Or we can't take money. We can't ask people to give us money for this.
If they want to give it to us, are you going to refuse it?
That's a crime, I'm sure. I'm sure that there's trading standards and all kinds.
Cake? How about cake?
Cake will do, yeah. Although actually, if somebody sent you cake through the post, would you eat it?
It depends where it came from.
Yeah, well, we don't know. That's the thing.
If it was cake Winslet.
No, that's...
Sorry.
If somebody sent Kate Winslet through the post to you, right?
Cake Winslet.
Yeah, if anyone would like to send us any sensible comments or questions, they can do so at our Twitter feed, which is at ugvm podcast, or they can email us at podcast@ugvm.org.uk. We also have a Steam curator page, which I'll put a link to somewhere, but I see that Toby hasn't updated it in a few months, so he needs to get on that, or one of us should, but no, he should do it. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter, I'm at deKay01. Would anybody else like to plug themselves or anything else?
I'm John M. Dow on Twitter, Tubery everywhere else, and hello to Jason Isaacs.
Okay.
I'm at Luffer virtually everywhere, so check me out on Twitter, YouTube, and various other places.
And I'm at XEXYZX on Twitter.
You've not discovered how to pronounce this yet, I see.
No, I think it's generally unpronounceable.
Okay. And that's...
Actually, I would give a shout out actually to there's a TV show. It's not a TV show because it's not on TV, but it's a show on on Twitch. There's broadcast on Twitch and Mixer and so on, called Wi-Fi Wars.
Okay.
It's by the people who did Go 8-Bit, but it's actually decent. And
damning
my
with
friend
faint
Matt
praise there.
Andrews, who is he's one of the people who does a lot of hosting of esports and so on around the world nowadays.
Okay.
He was on it a couple of weeks ago, and he introduced me to it. It's definitely worth watching.
Okay. And how much money do you have invested in this? Is that
none at all?
okay?
None at all. I wish I did, because then I'd be able to try and convince them to let me go on it.
Okay. In the spirit of that, Mr. Biffo of Digitizer fame, he's not asked to he's not given us any money for this, but I'd like to mention it anyway. He's raising some money on Kickstarter at the moment to do what he calls a proper video games television show. So in the style of things like Bad Influence and Games Master and the stuff from the 90s, things like that. And he's gone well past his target, so you don't need to give him any more money. But it looks kind of interesting. He's got some names from the past involved, like Violet Berlin and Big Boy Barry and stuff, and then some more current YouTubers like Kim Justice and that. So yeah, that might be quite interesting if anybody is interested in that. But that's nothing to do with us, and he doesn't listen to this anyway. So I just thought I'd mention it. I might cut it out.
So he's not a listener then?
He could be, but he's certainly not come forward to say he is. But then our listener is very secretive. I suspect we don't even have one. That's how secretive they are. But anyway, if we do have one and they'd like to contact us, then do all those things and see us in all those places. And join us again soon. I know we're not really very regular, but 1 a month-ish isn't too bad. So see you again. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.